Obeisance to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I welcome all of you for this Thangka Conservation and Collection Care Working workshop for 1 week. It is wonderful that we are able to successfully organize all the initial plannings and to have the actual presence of all the experts and a good number of participants from different institutions. I would like to first of all welcome Teresa Heady, Senior Conservator, former British Museum, London, and also Anne Bancroft, Head of Conservation and Collection Care, Barbados Museum and Historical Society, and Anupam Sah, Director Conservation Projects, Himalayan Society for Heritage and Art Conservation. I also had the privilege of meeting him earlier when he was working in this Chhatrapati Museum in Mumbai. Shall I offer the khatas to all of you? So let me start by telling a little bit about the Buddhist background of preserving Buddhist arts. The 5th and 4th centuries before Christ were a time of worldwide intellectual ferment. It was an age of great thinkers such as Socrates, Plato, Confucius, and Lao Tzu. In India, it was the age of the Buddha, after whose death a religion developed that eventually spread far beyond its homeland. So this period is actually called axial period. It's a beautiful written by one of American writer who calls it axial period. The path taught by Buddha is middle path, rejecting both luxury and asceticism. Buddhism proposes a life of good thoughts, good intentions, and straight living, all with the ultimate aim of achieving nirvana, release from earthly existence. So in brief, this point of middle way is very important. After the Buddha's passing away, the cremated relics of the Buddha were placed in relic cascades in stupas. So this is how the stupas originated. And it is actually said that at the time of the Buddha, he commissioned the first painting, which is the Wheel of Life painting, which we have at the entrance of the library also. So that probably is the first painting. So such stupas constitute the central monument of Buddhist monastic complexes. They attract pilgrims from far and wide who come to experience the unseen presence of the Buddhas. Stupas were enclosed by a railing that provides a path for ritual circumambulation. Tibetans are very fond of doing circumambulation around the temple, around the stupas. The sacred area is entered through gateways at the 4 cardinal points. Then in the 1st century before Christ, India's artists who had worked in the perishable media of brick, wood, thatch, and bamboo adopted stone on a very wide scale. Stone railings and gateways covered with relief sculptures were added to stupas. Favorite themes were events from the historic life of the Buddha as well as from his previous lives. In the earlier Buddhist art of India, the Buddha was not represented in human form. His presence was, if you look at all the carvings outside the Buddha Gaya stupa, you will see that. So the earliest Buddhist art of India, the Buddha was not represented in human form. His presence was indicated instead by a sign, such as a pair of footprints, or empty seat, or an empty space beneath a parasol. In the 1st century AD, the human image of one Buddha came to dominate the artistic scene, and one of the first sites at which this occurred was along India's northwestern frontier in the area known as Gandhara. Artistic that included also artistic elements from the Hellenistic world, combined with the symbolism needed to express Indian Buddhism to create a unique style. Youthful contemporaneously, the Koshan period artists in Mathura, India, produced a different image of the Buddha. His body was expanded by sacred breath, prana, and his clinging monastic robe was draped to leave the right shoulder bare. A third influential Buddha type evolved in Andhra Pradesh in southern India. I'm just highlighting some of the sketches, how things developed. The succeeding Gupta period from the 4th to the 6th century AD in northern India, sometimes referred to as Golden Age, witnessed the creation of an ideal image of the Buddha. Over the following centuries, there emerged a new form of Buddhism that involved an expanding pantheon and more elaborate rituals. This later Buddhism introduced the concept of heavenly bodhisattvas as well as goddesses like Tara and so forth. In Nepal and Tibet, where exquisite metal images and paintings were produced, new divinities were created and portrayed in both sculpture and painting scrolls. Images of more esoteric nature, that is the tantric figures, also came into being, depicting god and goddesses in embrace, were produced to demonstrate the metaphysical concept that salvation resulted from the union of wisdom, female, represented by female, and compassion, represented by male. Buddhism had traveled a long way from its simple beginnings. One word of caution I wanted to mention here is, because of this great respect paid to the images and paintings, some people think that Buddhists are idol worshippers, which is not the case. Once, I remember very clearly, once a student came to me and she studied with me for a few days, and she did not believe in idols. And one morning she came with some kind of anxiety, saying, I don't feel relaxed today because I saw Tibetans bowing before the idols, images. So then I asked her, do you keep the photos of your family when you travel around? She said, I do. It's similar. We don't see these images as the actual Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Through that images and statues and paintings, we remember the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, just as you would remember your family members with the help of photos. Not only you keep your family members' photos, but you also are very fond of sticking photos of celebrities, Hollywood and Bollywood, actors and actresses. Similar. In Tantra, in Tantra, one very unique thing that is found in Tantric practice is what we call as adopting the fruit into the path. The Sutric practice is you practice on the causes which leads to the achievement of the fruit, the enlightenment. But in Tantra, there is a very unique process of imagining yourself in the form of that particular deity. So here I would like to mention the importance of this visualization, because even ordinarily speaking, you become what you imagine, right? Whether it's your objective is to get a good education, a good job, you first have to have the blueprint, you imagine, and then gradually you become that. So similar, just to make long story short. And these deities in different forms, even in the forms of men and women in union, symbolizes inner qualities. So here what we need to think is go a little bit beyond the physical material body and think about those subjects in Buddhism which we call it immeasurables. Unthinkable objects are there. Immeasurable substance, like for example aeroplanes flying, and you are able to see all what is happening in America on your television. These are the possibilities that you can get by exploring the power of substances. Unthinkable. There's no limit. Now we are talking about artificial intelligence. This morning's news, I read a clip from this morning's news which says mishandling of artificial intelligence is much more dangerous than the nuclear bomb. So whether it's in the positive direction or negative direction, the human mind is unthinkable. Meditation is unthinkable. And this unthinkable power of the mind, when it uses these substances, the power of substances and chemicals, which is also unthinkable, you can create heaven or hell. That's the point we need to understand. Then I want to say a few words about what we should plan for the future in terms of conservation, which is today's topic. One very important thing that we need to remember here is collaboration between traditional and modern methods of study. In the library also, I always tell people that Tibetans are a small population with limited resources, therefore we must be clever. Clever means using modern media technology. So in the field of conservation is also this stands true. Art and culture have actually always been part of Buddhist studies. The traditional Buddhist scholar was usually more concerned about the text. This is a fact that we need to also acknowledge. The traditional Buddhist scholar was usually more concerned about the text and have limited knowledge of the arts or art history and history in general also. Many people may not be able to tell the exact date when the Buddha was born, when Buddha passed. Of course, it's a very complex, but this is just one example. And had limited knowledge of the arts or art history, unless it was associated with a particular text. The art historian also had limited knowledge of Buddhism. And the conservators were mainly technicians. And I was amazed to see the humbleness of these experts who we had a quick tour of the museum. And they were acting as if they were the participants. They came here to learn, not to teach. And they openly saying that you are the master of the content of the subject matter. We are only treating the matters. So that kind of humility and humbleness must be there in order to imbibe any knowledge. That must be there. So the art historian had limited knowledge of Buddhism, and the conservators were mainly technicians. It took an interested and dedicated student to acquire knowledge by himself or herself in all these areas. There is not much facility and place to study these things. Now, interestingly, a student need not attempt this alone. Studying art and conservation as a part of Buddhist studies can open cross-disciplinary possibilities with scientists, chemists, geologists, and specialists from other fields traditionally unconnected to Buddhist studies. So I was thinking that in our small institute also, maybe the manuscript section and the museum section work with the science department also, because of this many possibilities of learning from each other. Studying how to preserve them for posterity gives them a different perspective on how to read an object and adds an important layer to their significance. It is the objects of stone, wood, gold, silver, and bronze that motivate these students. Years and decades of writing, fieldwork, and analysis are devoted to preserving them. Most students would like to go on to a career that offers opportunities in curatorship or collection management. This love of the material and touchable testimonies to Buddhism's existence is bringing a much needed corporeal dimension to Buddhist studies. Ask any museum visitor what they think of a Buddhist item, and they will tell you how it looks, how it curves and contours appear, about the aura of the thing. They might tell you how it makes them feel calm, at peace, or even awestruck, are commonly used expressions. That's why we have so many people visiting year around. This joy cannot be shared without protecting the objects that gives rise to these positive emotions. Even our limited museum attracts visitors. Even our little museum attracts visitors, believers, and also many people come for healing. They're mentally not so happy, then they come to the museum, bow to a Buddha's image, and they feel happy. And that's why recently we included few more objects. One object, one section belonging to His Holiness's personal used items, like all his 3-4 kind of robes and the ritual implement that he used. We requested His Holiness, he's kindly given it to us, so we installed it quite recently. And just day before yesterday, we installed a butter sculpture, which was made by the lower tantric monastic colleges. So we are doing this so that we will be able to inspire and transmit that blessing and the power that these holy objects have to many who come to visit us. Let me say a word about art and culture. But what exactly should we understand by art and culture? Is it restricted to material heritage alone? It should not be just limited to sculpture and paintings, but we should think of institutions, monasteries, rituals, texts, and so on, all the traditional practices associated with Buddhism. In fact, in the recent years, there's so much talk about archiving, digitization, and so forth. And many a times, with a challenging note, while accepting the great benefits of the modern ways of archiving, digitizing, and so forth, in a challenging note, I also told them the most important way of archiving thing is archiving in your mind. Study the subject matters, put it in your brain, practice it, make it part of life. That's the best way of preservation and transmitting it to the next generation. And if we have a gradually group of generation who has no idea about the basic Buddhist teachings and so forth, even if you have stored and archived many, many sacred objects, it will be only for display in a museum. So I call it almost like dead objects presented in a museum. So this is not directly related to what we are doing, but this is something I like to draw the mind of the people who are attending this workshop. Buddhist studies has the immense potential to build a holistic curriculum around the totality of Buddhist heritage. Now let us, for a moment, think about this little kind of paradox. Buddhism teaches impermanence, emptiness, and so on, and that our incorrect views about these issues cause our suffering in this relative world. So it may seem one should not be overly concerned with preservation and conservation of Buddhist art. This is another area. But here, as I mentioned briefly earlier, the concept of understanding the Buddhist concept of middle way is extremely important. On the one hand, in the middle way concept, we deny the subjective inherent existence of anything from its own side, but we do not deny the existence, conventional existence of any object. In fact, in many of the Madhyamika texts, it is clearly mentioned that the conventional truth is the way and the means to the ultimate truth. So preserving these artifacts, images, and holy, sacred objects, these are conventional truths. So it's by relating, touching, and feeling, we can go into the deeper world of ultimate reality. So this is something that we should understand. But an understanding of the entire history and context of Buddhism and its art and culture is important for one's Buddhist practice also. Another thing that we need to plan, hopefully, in the future is giving courses in the conservation of Buddhist art and culture within a Buddhist studies degree. We can have this kind of short term, workshops and so forth, but unless you really train some qualified people for preserving it, we may not be able to proceed much. The traditional focus, as I mentioned earlier, was the traditional focus of translating and analyzing texts have often taken precedence. Textual and translation studies and the learning of liturgical language like Pali, Sanskrit, Chinese, and Tibetan have been seen as paramount in Buddhist studies. Historically, visual media were also a powerful communicator of religious ideas. Because we cannot all become Milarepa, You must have heard about the great saint scholar Milarepa, who is really the one who sees the temple and image and everything inside, and he doesn't need even a proper cloth. So that is exceptional. But we are not like that. So therefore it is important for us to have a medium through which we go into the deeper layers of the truth. And if art was so important to Buddhists in the past, its conservation should be a central component of Buddhist studies alongside the study of the texts. And especially today, for example, in the case of the Tibetans, things are not like as we were in Tibet. Tibet was a kind of natural sanctuary. Many people prefer calling Tibet a refrigerator, where without any refrigerator, the modern kind of refrigeration, you can keep grains for months. You can even keep meat for months. So it's a natural sanctuary. But now, at least those of us who are in exile, we live in a completely different situation. Now there are thieves, robbers looking around, finding the sacred object. Then in the case of Dharamsala, we are living in earthquake zone number 5, the most highly risked zone. And we have been shaken few times earlier. And then we have heavy monsoon, like Dharamsala is the second place in India experiencing heaviest monsoon after Cherrapunji in Assam. Then fire, and then moths, insects, and so forth, some of which you saw yesterday also. Then, of course, we need to also understand Buddhist art belongs to everybody, and we therefore have a shared responsibility towards it. Any important culture, art, which is a universal message, be it in Europe, in America, in Africa, or any part of the world, it is a human heritage, and we must all endeavor to preserve it. Certainly, Buddhist history and its arts are a crucial components of humankind's collective heritage. And it goes without saying that the preservation and conservation of Buddhist art and culture are a worthwhile and vital endeavor for the world. That's all I want to say, and we have a few more days to discuss things later. So finally, I would like to thank Tibet Fund and USAID for looking after all the expenses of this workshop. Money makes mayor go is absolutely true. Without funding, there's nothing we can do. And with fund alone is not enough. With fund and then human endeavor, we can achieve many heights. So I would like to thank them. I would also like to thank the conservation experts who are sitting on the platform, coming all the way. Not only coming all the way, but they are busy people, Normally it is the trend in the most busy people, they get the most job, So the fact that they are invited means they are very busy. So thank you for coming all the way to share your expertise and many, many years of experience. I also like to thank my library staffs, Tenzin Lawangla, the Deputy Secretary, who took responsibility in many related activities of this particular project. Sonam Tobjela, the head of the manuscript section, and his team, Namji Seringla and his assistant. I thank all of them for making this workshop a very successful start at least. And also would like to thank all the participants and the institutions from where they came from to participate in this very special workshop. I thank all the participants, institutions, because normally human beings are very, very reluctant to change. They are scared of doing new things. They feel very comfortable in their in their cozy, nest or whatever you want to call it. Very, very difficult. So unless change is law of nature, as we all know, within that law of nature of change, unless you adapt yourself by embracing new initiatives and changes, you will die a natural death. That is what the history says. In other words, this is called adaptation, right? You may have certain particular expertise, but if you think this is all you need in the world, absolutely wrong. So therefore, at least some of the institutions, whatever be the reason, they could not send their participants, but many of them send it. So I would like to thank the participants and also the institutions. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward for the rest of the days. Thank you.
Thank you, Kishila. Dijila EUNIFE Jam Teresa Heady Chone, Naze Nyaza ko Songshe Nangyu. I request Madam Teresa Heady to speak few words on conservation and preservation.
First of all, I would like to thank Geshe LTWA for very kindly and giving us the honor to come here and talk with you. I think we all agree that what Geshe LTWA said is that we will learn as much from you as we hope to help you learn about how to care for your collections. And I guess we would just like to, at this very moment, just introduce ourselves, and then we would like to talk about what your needs are and what you see would be the best thing for you to take away from this workshop, what we can help you develop for the care of your own collections. So my name is Teresa Heady. I have been a conservator for 45 years, and my main work has been with sacred Buddhist objects, and I have traveled throughout Asia, through Mongolia and Tibet proper, and India and China, to teach Thangka conservation. So my expertise is with working with painted Thangkas. I do know more about wood and metal, but my real expertise is on textiles and the textile elements of Thangkas. So I can't say much more than that, I don't think. So I'd like to pass to my colleagues.
Tashidele, thank you so much. Again, saying the same thing that Teresa said, it's a great honor to be here with you all. I look forward to the time that we have together. We look forward to the exchanges and to the discussions. My name is Anne Bancroft. I've been working after training for about 20 years in conservation around different parts in the world. I have a specialism in paper as well as experience with manuscripts, working in different institutions and also with some institutions that are focused on the preservation of Tibetan cultural heritage in the diaspora, called Shanzhong Institute. Also working with some museums and some monasteries. I had the good fortune to study Buddhist art history and conservation at the Courtauld. So I have a real passion for this, and look forward to doing anything that we can to help you in your work with preserving the Buddha Dharma. So thank you.
ताशी तिलक मेरा नाम अनुपम सा है. I am from Nainital in the Kumaon Hills. I was brought up there. And when my family got to know that I'm coming here, Geshe-la, thank you for inviting us. My sister sent me a photograph which was taken in 1983. I was a young boy and His Holiness in Dharamsala. I remember when I had come here, as children do, I said that I was thinking I'll become his liaison officer in the Indian Foreign Service. So I said that if I succeed in entering the IFS, may the chance of serving you come my way. You know, it did not happen that way, but this is destiny, and our chance of serving him has come this other way. And over the years, as you mentioned, I was trained in the sciences earlier, and then working with one's hands, and with training in the arts and art conservation. So this is a field that brings together all the arts and the sciences wisely, you know. And so with this basic training, one has been working across the Indian subcontinent and our neighboring countries also on a variety of art objects, historic works, artistic works, and I think in the Eastern context, sacred works. Because it has always been historic and artistic works. I think the works that we are dealing with or which we are going to address, it's not just art and aesthetics. I think the aspect of sacredness is involved not only in the material of the objects, but also in the processes by which we interact with them. So with this spirit, we have worked across, right from Tawang in the northeast of India to Mangyu in Ladakh and other monasteries, or whether it was Kandy in Sri Lanka. So all across the subcontinent. And over the years, one has been in touch with colleagues as wonderful as and Teresa and Michael. And we have all worked together towards one common purpose. And today you have also joined us in this common purpose. So we look forward to these few days together. And I think in terms of our discussion yesterday, I think one thing that we would, on behalf of you, with your kind permission, I will say that this is a time together, these 7-8 days, not about just talking about what to do, but I think all of us who are attending here today have to think right now and every evening and day about what is the need of our collection, so that after 10 days, we go back with a solution for it. So within these 8-9 days, the team will be modifying and changing and developing and growing their training so that your answers are addressed. We can, as you know, that they have a huge amount of experience. But it is entirely up to you what you take from it. In the Panchatantra, Geshe-la, Panchatantra, there's a wonderful verse that says, of horse or man or book or sword, of woman, man or lute or word, the use or uselessness depends on qualities the user lends. So it is entirely up to you how much you can extract. It is an endeavor on your part also. So that way. So we are here to offer from our heart, absolutely sincerely, what we will be able to. And I think an equal responsibility has to be taken by all of us present in this room to it's all for a common purpose. So let us all work together practically. And there's a wonderful structure that has been discussed, and we will be sharing that with you later on in the day. Thank you.
The page roji the kishla the jine song saso toche shue mangche roji kishla song saso jine tanga da ya di kya to ya benzu rang ngone ya toche shue kashi shitu de de shuyi zo da tanda kishla song bana shire benjo gi tingge mewe inen je to sk yo mare cheza den anda US8 de me Tibet fund de gi da nyamdo ya ngazo nyamane tindechi ya lega leshi tinde yebegi tumanguchi shucha de de chele ta ta da yi ne chango ya tindechi ya tingechi na yore 제가 단다 디 단데 리시 망구지 요래 디나네다 직 단다 가지고 단다 conservation 기 workshop들이 제가 단다 코나즈 사말리아 벤전에 토체 나스 쉬웨이 데네 단 게실라다 먼저 벤주 다 레시 카리네 되게 강가야 쪽으로 되게 게실라 도르시제 단다바도 단데기 workshop들하고 있네 되게 강가 다 게실라기야 lamdoyo olya ngazo dos che yoyin de keshila le atoche nas chikshwe da timembe tanda ngazo ge tanda workshop dil ya zo tanda ta lobde nanga kheba shungro da tanda khona zo preservation ge de che to pe gyo khona zo sum yore ne khona zo sum le benzu ge ne toche nas chikshwe da dena shin da ge ngam de lenge tamu che de shunyo da 디나로리아 냠슈낭이 매웨이나데 간에마 라게 여베이네 페토 에스케메 여도치 제자 단다델리아 다른부네 페니아 콜레교네 팽행기 대냠슈낭이 성물로리 토셔나스 지시슈비 데네 디나시 단다라데 녜로바 벤즈나네 단다 데링기 sabjon디 라체도 라조 님도 냠루체니아 차로낭에 계속도 라이어레 견남게 라이어레 코라니 님도 코라니 대쟁기 레제 상황 먹고 지어레 상 코나도 설레다 죽들레 코나도 되게 될레 도착할 수 있게